Good afternoon. Today's lesson we are going to learn how to multiply a decimal by a whole number. So if you think back to what we did in yesterday's lesson in class, we learned how to multiply um, decimals by 10, 100, and 1,000. And when we do that, we simply move the decimal point. How many of our places is equal to the number of zeros in the power of 10. So if it's times 10, you're moving it one place because there's one zero. If it's times 100, you're moving the decimal to the right two places because there are two zeros in 100. And if it's times 1,000, you are moving the decimal place three places to the right because there are three zeros in 1,000. Today we are just simply multiplying decimals and whole numbers, not powers of 10. And if you notice the note I wrote at the bottom, if you can multiply a whole number by a whole number, you can multiply a decimal by a whole number. The only difference you're going to find here is placing your decimal point. That is the most important part of multiplying a decimal by a whole number, knowing where to place that decimal point. So let's start off just by looking at a quick word problem. The price of admission to a minor league baseball game increased by 1,700 times the amount of last year's admission. If last year's admission was $26, how much is the increase? So it's asking us how much the price increased, and we know up here it increased 1,700 times. Because we see that word times, we know we're multiplying. It increased. It didn't just increase by 17, but increased 1,700 times. So to find that, we have to multiply the original price of a ticket, which was $26, times 1,700. And that's going to tell us how much the ticket increased from last year to this year. So what I would like to ask you to get in the habit of doing is when you have a whole number that you multiply by a decimal, even decimals by decimals, but for today, whole numbers by decimals. For now, pretend like the decimal isn't there and let's just multiply. We know how to multiply two digit by two digit numbers. 7 times 6 is 42. Put down your 2, carry your 4. 7 times 2 is 14 plus 4 is 18. Get rid of that because we used it. Remember, bring down your placeholder. Bring down your 0 because now we're multiplying over here in the tens column. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 2 is 2. Add it like we always do when we multiply. 2 plus 0 is 2. 8 plus 6 is 14. Carry 1. 2, 3, 4. Now, remember we're trying to find how much the increase was in the price of admission. We've multiplied by a decimal, which means our answer has to have a decimal in it. The way you determine where your decimal goes is to look back up in your two factors. You count the number of digits total that are after the decimal point. And in this case, only one of the digits or one of the numbers has a decimal point in it. So there's two digits past the decimal point, which means in our answer we have to do 2 digits past the decimal point in the answer. Okay, so the biggest thing to remember is multiply as usual, then count the digits after the decimal point in your problem. That's how many digits have to be after the decimal point in your answer. Okay, so let's work a few problems. Now, problems like this can be written horizontally or vertically. We just looked at one that was vertical. We stacked it up vertically. Horizontally, you still have to stack it up in order to work it. So let's remember that if there's a 0 before the decimal point, you do not have to use it when you do your calculation. So I'm going to write 457 thousandths times 3. Now remember, I'm going to ignore this decimal point at this point. 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 5 is 15 plus 2 is 17. 3 times 4 is 12 plus 1 is 13. Okay, I have a decimal in my problem, which means I have to have a decimal in my answer. Let's count how many numbers, how many digits are after the decimal in the problem. 1, 2, 3, which means 1, 2, 3. there have to be 3 digits after the decimal in my answer. So 457 thousandths times 3 is 1 and 371 thousandths. Okay, let's try this next one. 34 times 5.3. And let's remember too that the way you stack, I always like to stack the biggest number on top. Just helps when you multiply, but remember it's commutative. Doesn't matter which way you multiply, you're going to get the same answer. Okay, again, let's ignore the decimal point. 3 times 4 is 12. Put down your 2, carry your 1. 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1 is 10. Bring down your placeholder. 5 times 4 is 20. Put down your 0. Carry your 2. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 2 is 17. Let's add up our partial products. 2 plus 0 is 2. 0 and 0 is 0. 7 plus 1 is 8. Bring down your 1. Now, in our problem, there's only one digit past the decimal, which means in our answer, there can only be one digit past the decimal. So 34 times 5 and 3/10 is 180 and 2/10. On to the next problem. Now, when I look at this number, when I can bring it to multiply, I'm not going to bring this over. I'm just going to write 3 thousandths times 45. And then I'm going to multiply. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. 5 times 0 is 0. Bring down your placeholder. 4 times 3 is 12. Put down your 2. Carry your 1. 4 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. 4 times 0 is 0. Add it up. There are 3 numbers after my decimal in the problem, which means there have to be 3 numbers after my decimal in the answer. So technically we don't even need that 0 there. Your answer is 135 thousandths. And the last one, I'm going to put my 34.6 on the top because it has the most digits, times 21. I'm going to disregard my decimal until I'm ready to, until I have my answer. 1 times 6 is 6, 1 times 4 is 4, 1 times 3 is 3. Bring down your placeholder because now we're in the tens column. 2 times 6 is 12. Down 2, carry 1. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 1 is 9. 2 times 3 is 6. Add them up. 6 plus 0 is 6. 4 plus 2 is 6. 9 plus 3 is 12. 6 plus 1 is 7. When I go back and look at my problem, there's only one number past the decimal point, which means in my answer, there can only be one digit past the decimal point. So 34 and 6/10 times 21 equals 726 and 6/10. Okay, so hopefully you are seeing how simple multiplying decimals and whole numbers are. It's just the matter of figuring out how many numbers are past the decimal in the problem. Make sure that's how your answer looks as well. All right, this is a really quick lesson tonight. These are the 3 things I would like for you to do. In part 1 of your notes page, work this problem that you see here. 34 and 6/10 times 9. When you're finished with that, in part 2, please work this problem for me. 34,000 times 2 and 6500ths. And in part 3 of your notes page today, please write me a complete sentence describing what our learning goal was today. See you tomorrow in class.